Hello everyone and welcome to episode 309 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Now joining me on today's episode is a guest that needs no introduction. I'm joined by the absolute drumming legend, Dave Lombardo. A dream guest for me. I say this many times on Mark and Me, but it really is. Think about it. He's been in Slayer, Misfits, Mr. Bungle, and Empire State Bastard, who are touring as we speak right now, and for me have given us one of the best albums of the year. What an amazing band, and this follows on really nicely from episode 300 when I was joined by Simon Neil, the frontman of Empire State Bastard. But today's episode, it's honestly one of my favourites. Dave is an absolute legend, and I'm so grateful and glad that I've been able to get him on the Mark and Me podcast. But in true typical Mark and Me fashion, just before we get to the interview, let's look back and talk about my last episode. On episode 308, I was joined by Adam Lazzara, the frontman from Taking Back Sunday. Another great guest, another great interview, and the response was amazing, so thank you to everyone that listened, it really means the world. But today, it's all about one man, Dave Lombardo, and I think the best thing to do is to get straight to the interview. So here's me and Dave talking all things music. So Dave, thanks for joining me today on the Mark and Me podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Dave, what I do with every single guest that comes on the show, it doesn't matter if you're an actor, a director, or in a band, you always get the same first question. When you were growing up, what was that first album that you remember having? Maybe you bought it with your pocket money or it was given to you that made you fall in love with music?
Well, I don't think it was one particular album. I think I had fallen in love with music at a very young age while attending, parties with my parents and watching bands play. And it wasn't rock bands or anything like that. It was, Latin jazz bands or, Cuban salsa bands. And watching those performances at a young age and watching, how much pleasure those musicians got out of playing on stage and watching people on the dance floor enjoy themselves. I think that was a trigger and a moment for me to, to embrace, this career. Even at that young age, it's all I wanted to do was play drums. But I mean, to play drums in rock music, I believe it had to have been Kiss, and the album was Kiss Alive, the very first Alive album. And I think that album harnesses, excitement of a live show. I don't know what it was, the way it was mixed, the excitement of the crowd. And you can hear that on that record. So I think it had to have been that one that really solidified my direction.
And what about live music? So I'm 41. One of the first gigs I ever went to, I remember my parents dropping me off, was Green Day. It was on their Dookie tour. So they're really young. MTV2 was showing them all day, every day. And it was just incredible to be there. But I couldn't believe how incredible they sounded, even though there's only 3 people on stage. I was like, this is unbelievable. 1 guitar, 1 bass, 1 drums. But it made me want to be in a band. It made me want to pick up a guitar. It made me just want to do that for the rest of my life. And I wondered, was there a band that kind of did that for you, or was it later on in life?
Actually, no, there wasn't, any particular band. I believe I was playing drums. I had a drum set and I was, jamming with local musicians, I think from the age of 13. And I don't think I went to my first concert until I was around 15. And that first concert was Ted Nugent headlining,
Wow.
and Scorpions were opening up. and that was a real treat,
That's hell of a
obviously.
first gig, isn't it? When you think about that, those two as your first
Yeah,
live experience of a band, like you didn't
yeah,
start
Ted
small, did you?
Nugent. Yeah, I mean, this is way before the political Ted Nugent.
Yeah.
And so this is, I remember him swinging on stage, on some kind of a vine, and in his little bikini or loincloth or whatever he was wearing at the time. And it was awesome. He's a fantastic guitar player. But like I said, that was way before uh, anything like what's happening today.
So, what was the moment in your life when you thought? I know you said you were playing drums at a very young age and that's all you wanted to do. But what was the point when you thought to yourself, I want to actually really do this and I'll tell my family that this is the road I'm going to take? As some parents, they might look down and be like, it's their biggest nightmare when their child turns around and says they want to be a film star or a rock star. But were they
Yeah.
supportive? Were they like, you can do this, son, we believe in you, you've got a great ability at a young age? Or were they always kind of skeptical, thinking, oh, like, is this going to pay off?
They were skeptical at first, but there were little hints that I was excelling in what I was doing and playing along with certain songs that I would buy 45s to. Uh, and I'd be in the living room on the family stereo putting on music and playing along with my, having drumsticks and playing along on the couch, hitting the couch and stuff. And I remember my mom peeking around the corner in a certain part of the song, and I was just locked in as she peeked around the corner. I was like, wow, that's pretty good. But yeah, I was, reprimanded a couple times for, you know, for low grades and more interested in music than in my studies. Um, but I think it got to a point where they saw the passion, and my mom knew, that I was onto something. After all, she was at one of the Rain and Blood shows, and
Wow.
then my dad later, I convinced him to go to. It was like probably 88 or 89 to a Slayer concert, and he was blown away. He couldn't believe it. In his broken English, he was speaking to the representatives for the cymbal company, Feisty Cymbals, and in his broken English, explaining to them, Dave was this small playing drums on the pots and pans in the kitchen, and now this, and he just couldn't believe it. He was, he was more focused on working, than knowing what was going on with me, and so he was surprised. He was surprised and blown away. And still to this day, the cymbal company, Eric Peisty and the Peisty family still, on occasion remind me of that moment and how cute it was.
You mentioned then Rain in Blood, and in 1986 you were lucky enough to record with Rick Rubin, who I think is probably one of the best producers of all time. The fact that he can do every genre and it sounds perfection. I wonder what it was like kind of working on an album at that stage of your life, probably so young and still kind of naive and exploring the world, but working with such a genius that got the best sound from you guys that you could ever dream of.
Well, first of all, his book is amazing.
I've got
I
it.
love
It's amazing. I try and not read
it.
it all at once because I want to save it. So I read a couple of pages and then put it down because I'm like, I don't want this to end.
Yeah. But luckily we have a lot of his podcast
Yeah.
now, which is full of wisdom, and some of his posts on Instagram are just they're so valuable. Some of those quotes it's like a little piece of gold. It's like a diamond, and it helps working with him. I remember he was always present when I tracked drums.
Yeah.
He was to me, he when I would like to, let's say, tracking for South of Heaven or Rain and Blood or Seasons, he was always there, and he would always tell me, he always suggest, "Hey, Dave, try this, uh, try to tease the public that there's another section coming up in the song with a drum roll, and but don't go into you're not going to go into, let's say, the chorus. Just tease, and then give the big drum roll, right before the chorus, building tension and excitement. He had this really, you know innate understanding of music and feeling, which is, I think, more valuable um, than education in music,
Yeah.
because if you could deliver something based on feeling, um, I think you've captured the attention of the listener. So much of his input during that time for me was valuable, and I still use a lot of his ideas. It's marking. It's on those records. He inspired me. He was like a cheerleader in the monitor room.
I was going to
He'd
say, did it
listen to
feel like an
music.
extra? I was going to say, did it feel like an extra member of the band because he was there, kind of giving you ideas and probably opening up your mind to taking on new ideas that perhaps you may have not thought of yourself. So you need that guidance and trust in him, but he delivered.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, he delivered for sure.
Yeah.
And also, and not only with his inspiration, his ideas, his enthusiasm, but I think also the fact that he has worked with so many. I think the marking moment for me, and kind of started my path towards being more of a solo drummer, instead of
Yeah.
only staying within one band. I wanted to work with many musicians, different musicians, because I really love the collaborating aspect of music. Um, I think watching him juggle a mixing session between Slayer, Beastie Boys, and Run DMC in New York
That blows
City.
my mind.
That blows my mind.
And you were
There's a
there in the
photograph.
room, yeah.
There's a photograph of Run DMC, Beastie Boys, and Slayer, Rick Rubin, and George Draculius, which was his assistant at the time, and later became the producer of the Black Crowes, the famous album that they put out, the real popular
Yeah.
album. And I can't recall the name right now, but anyways, at that point, it's like, wow, I want to work with other musicians. If he can do it, so he planted that seed in my mind. Then later it was when I met uh, Mike Patton that solidified that, because he was, very diverse,
Yeah.
and worked with many musicians. So yeah, inspiring, very, very inspiring. That guy is just he is a national treasure.
Looking back on your time with Slayer, and it must seem quite a long time ago now, but did you ever, because you were such a big part of it from such a young age, were you aware, being in the band, of how you were progressing over time? Were you able to ever take a step back and see these crowds getting bigger? The support slots were now you being the main act, more t-shirts were being sold, the venues were bigger. Did you actually ever get to witness that, or was it too much of a whirlwind that you were too caught up with it internally?
I was caught up in my own personal turmoil.
Yeah.
Uh, so a lot of it I really didn't see, or you know, uh, really sense the magnitude of what the band was doing. But now looking back, I do. But at the time, you really didn't. Yeah, you saw it get bigger and bigger. But, there were at that time, there were a lot of questions. But then there were times where, I just went with the flow. I uh, um, just didn't care. Just played and just enjoyed the ride.
If you had your time again, would you have done the final tour, or would you go back if they asked you to do? I know it'd be absolutely psychotic now of those to announce another tour, but if they did,
Yeah.
would you be on board?
I really don't want to answer anything like that because, what ends up happening is that the focus right now would be Empire State Bastard and my future,
Yeah,
and the future, which is, I think, a big part of my personal success is that I don't look back. I'm always striving to better myself musically and in every way possible. Uh, and so, answering a question like that sometimes takes away of
of course.
what our focus is on right now. So respectfully, I'm going to have to decline that
Hey, that's
question.
absolutely fine. And let's talk more about today because, when I want to talk to you, there's a lot more than just Slayer that we want to talk about. But I was really intrigued with Mr. Bungle on your first meeting with Mike because he is a genius. I'll say that. He's an absolutely incredible human being. And I really hope we get to see them in the UK because I had tickets for Faith No More and it got cancelled. And, hopefully it's not too long until we get that. But I was wondering what your first experience was on meeting him and then getting the chance to work together.
Uh, wow. Meeting him for the first time. I remember seeing him for the first time. I
Yeah.
was at Day on the Green. This had to have been late 1991 in San Francisco. And they were sound checking. And he had a bondage mask on at sound check.
In sound check, not
You
even for the
know,
main performance.
with I think it might have been sound check. Uh,
That's amazing.
and he was wearing this bondage mask, leather bondage mask, with a bathtub plug on the mouth. So when he would sing, he would take off the bathtub plug and start singing.
This is incredible.
And then I met him personally. I think it had to have been it was Faith No More's last show, last tour, last show. It was in LA, Los Angeles. And I ended up backstage hanging out, talking with the band. Oh, because I knew Puffy,
Yeah.
the drummer, and Mike Borden. And he invited me, and I met Patton. And at that time, I was already out of Slayer. And he picked my brain about music. And he just simply asked me about my current band at the time, which was Grip Incorporated. And he says, it's like an avant-garde band. And I'm like, kind of. We're a little experimental, but, it wasn't to that extreme. And maybe a year later, he gave me a phone call and asked me and explained to me about Fantômas, and he explained the music and asked me if I would like to participate. And during that phone call and the conversation and the way he was explaining the music, I understood. And from that point forward, I think that opened that moment, and that music opened my mind to that it was okay, that made it acceptable to be different and to challenge the listener and express yourself in any way you want, not following any genres or break down genre walls. Incorporate, like Rick Rubin did. He he dabbled in different genres. And, if you could dabble in different genres, and then musically as a musician, you should be able to meld, genres together and create different styles and approaches to music. So he definitely patent solidified that for me. And from that point onward, I vowed to continue this, you know, this approach of collaborations with musicians.
It must be amazing. I sometimes think, how does your brain focus that you must have such a range of different people you work with, that you must be like a robot that needs to switch on to, like, right now I'm doing Slayer, now I'm doing Misfits, now I'm doing Mr. Bungle, now I'm doing Empire State Bastard. Like, I don't know how you do it, but it must keep you on your toes, always wanting more, always hungry, and always working with different people, which must be the best part of being someone creative.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I think working with different musicians, collaborating, enjoying, where you are. Let's say, for example, with Empire State Bastard, I got to spend, you know, some amazing time in England and rehearsing in Todmorden, uh, and visiting all these different, smaller cities of England. And it's been amazing and so much fun, uh, hanging out with them, going to the pubs, late night after rehearsal. It's just, I love it. So that's always, a big part of the collaboration process. It's not just showing up for rehearsal and then everybody goes off to their hotels. We actually rented an Airbnb, a home in the middle of in the countryside, and it was beautiful. It was awesome, and we got to hang out, relax. After rehearsal, I had some dinner, had a couple pints, a great conversation. Everybody went to their rooms. The next day, breakfast, coffee. And it's you get to really know each other and know who you're dealing with, as with your personalities, which is really important, because sometimes there's surprises, when it comes to, working with other musicians, and you're like, whoa, where'd that come from? And make you wonder of their stability. But so far, it's been awesome, with this band.
I want to talk mostly Empire State Bastard. Simon Neil, for me, is probably one of the best songwriters in the world. I really, truly mean that. He's an absolute god, and that's why I got him on episode 300 of Mark and Me, because genuinely, he's my idol. I think what he does is just, it blows my mind. So on that episode, he talked to me about how he reached out to you on an email. Him and Mike kind of sent the email as kind of a bit of a joke, like, imagine Dave Lombardo doing this. And then while they were demoing, they even called the drums Lombardo as a dream and a fantasy. And I'd love to hear it from your perspective of what it was like when that email came through, because you must have so many requests. And I wonder what that moment was like that made it kind of stick out for you, that took note of this.
Well, at that point, we were, I think, mid-pandemic,
Yeah.
and and I was surprisingly very busy. But it was a different, busy. It wasn't, traveling, from one country to another, or, you know, schlepping a suitcase through the airport or taxis or anything like that. I was at home. I was in my studio, and I was working on several different projects. I had worked on. I ended up being a performer on one song for Satanic Planet, and I ended up playing and producing all of the songs. So that was one project. I worked on Annihilator, on their album Metal 2. I recorded that at home. Worked on a movie soundtrack with Phil Eisner, and it was called Thunder Force with Melissa McCartney. And
do you ever sleep, Dave?
A lot. I have to get myself out of bed, man. I do
Wow.
know I get plenty of rest, and I spend a lot of time with my wife,
Yeah.
Also, and I have a project, a band called Venomoris,
With your wife.
with my wife Paula, which is
Yes.
more rib shots, very mellow. It's beautiful, um, beautiful ballads, singer songwriter, and I'm producing it, and we're just having a fun time doing it. So yes, I do sleep, I do spend time with my wife, and so I was working on all those projects, and then I had told my wife, because she's kind of like my buffer between emails and requests and social media. I kind of stay away from all of that. Um, so she hit me. I told her, I said, I cannot take on any more projects. I'm done. I'm like up to here. I felt like my brain was just going to explode with everything I had to do and all the music I had to deliver, which there was no complaints because I enjoyed every moment of it. So the email
So you
came
are
in.
human after all. You're not a
I
robot.
am, yes.
Yes,
Yes. There. Now that's a headline.
that's the one. Dave Lombardo is actually a human.
It's human. So the email came in. It went to Paula, and recommend through Ipecac. So Mark Shapiro is the product manager for Ipecac, and he worked with Ocean Size for a
Yeah.
period of time. So it went from my consignment to Mark Shapiro to my wife Paula. And at that time, I told Paula, no more gigs. I cannot take on another project. That's it. And that was like 2 days prior to the email coming in. And so she heard it, and she said, "Hey, there's something that came in from Mark." And I said, "Babe, I can't take anything else on." She said, "You really need to listen to this." I said, "What?" And I've never heard her, express,
Of course, yeah.
that kind of, you know, excitement, for any music like that. And she said, "You really need to listen to this." I said, "Really?" She says, "Yeah, check this out." And when I first heard it, I was captivated not only by the vocals, by the music, the songwriting, but the tone of the guitars,
Yeah.
the odd time signatures, which I really uh, I've dabbled in odd time signatures, but being thrash metal, everything isn't straight 4/4. There's an occasional 6/8, but for the most part, it's 4/4 thrash beats, and that's it. So this music uh, blew me away by it's the offbeats and the counter rhythms and the guitar tone and the vocals, the melodies. The song "Moi" for me is a masterpiece, as well as the looming.
I'm not
You
just
know,
saying this now. I said to Simon when I was doing the interview, I've been walking around the house when the album came out saying, "It's always someone
yeah,
else's fault." And it was
yep,
embedded in my head. And
me
before I
too.
did the interview for that whole week, I was just whistling it or humming it. And I was like, I didn't realize how impactful that little line is, but it just stayed there and grew and grew. And I was like,
Yeah,
I need this album now. And then luckily, two
yeah,
weeks later, we got the album. But my God,
yep,
that melody was there.
yeah, yeah. There you go.
Genius,
That
genius.
is key. Genius. The melodies are so important, you know, and that's what most people get hooked on. And that was a big part of that album. When I heard the demo, I was like, man, these hook lines are amazing. And which is rare when it comes to a hardcore band. There are some, but not as well done as this, as Empire State Bastard. So not only, like I said, not only the vocals, not only, the music in general, the sound, but the melodies, uh, Simon's voice, it's beautiful. It's brilliant.
Unbelievable.
The fact that he could scream, from oh no, excuse me, this screaming and his voice, the aggressive voice, and then going back to the more uh, uh, the softer ranges, and it's just genius.
Yeah.
So that pretty much sums it up there, and I immediately went back to them and I said, I'm into it. I love the music. And then I researched the musicians, and they were reputable, beyond reputable, and I believe in it. And it's hard for me to turn down something that not only has a brilliant quality, but I also believe in it. And I think that makes it even a stronger package, when everybody on board um, has, this positive, approach and attitude, towards the band and the musicians, and respect for the music and its integrity. And it's just phenomenal. I love those guys. I'm looking
But
forward to seeing them when I
not
get to
long
pair.
now. Not long.
No, no,
And I
yeah.
suppose when you said you looked out to make sure, they're legit and look at their musicianship and their back catalogs and stuff. Were you aware of Biffy Clyro or Ocean Size up until then?
I was aware of Biffy Clyro, but not aware of Ocean Size. I had heard of Biffy Clyro because of the amount of times I've been in Europe and in the UK, and, looking at the download posters, all, the Glastonbury posters, and you look at the names of the bands, and, Biffy Clyro sticks out. I'm like, wow. So I had heard of them.
But had you
Yes.
actually not heard them actually on record?
No, no, until
Wow. So
recent.
that must
Yeah.
have been amazing because I've been
Yeah.
a fan of that band for over 20 years. And
And then I saw some of their live performances. When was it? It had to have been the end of 2019, and maybe even 2021 or 22. They were playing some shows. I think, yeah, I think it might have been 2022. Um, I saw some of their live performances online, and it's just amazing.
unbelievable. So they get this email back. It must feel like Christmas for them because they were kind of having this dream and this fantasy. But then you hired out this Airbnb and you did it like a band that are just starting, like a student band might do, or a band that are just trying to do their first EP. You took it right back to the roots. And isn't that
Yeah,
glorious? And instead of you all flying out to LA and having this incredible lifestyle, you took it back to the raw elements of just getting to know each other. And I think that surely is part of the magic that made the album so special, and the friendship and the, I don't know, like the family feel for you guys. You're not just a normal band. You've come from all different backgrounds, but you've come as one now.
yes, I have to agree with that. But one thing I might have to make a little correction, and I'm not sure that I recorded that they sent me the stems to the music, and I recorded everything at home, and I sent
Yeah,
the drums back, and that was in 2020, and then we didn't meet until early 2022.
that's mind blowing.
So, yeah, so we had been communicating via text, social media, and emails, from 2020 through 21, 22, until we finally met in 23. I didn't know who the bass player was going to be until we got on a Zoom meeting before I, flew out to the UK to meet them for the first time. And it was funny because Naomi, she was nervous. She said, "Oh my God, here I am on a Zoom call with Biffy Clyro and members of Biffy Clyro and Dave Lombardo from Slayer." And so she had her moment of nervous, and we were all nervous. We were giddy and happy when we saw each other. And we were like, yeah, here we are. You know,
It's real. It's actually happening.
yeah, it's like actually real. It's happening. And you know, everybody was just, we could not stop smiling, laughing, joking, and having a good time. And I think that set the band off on one of the best, you know, momentous moments of our careers, you know. And here we are, just looking forward to every moment we get to play on stage together, because it's always epic. It's always exciting, you know.
That first performance at Download Festival, when you guys had only released, I think, one or two songs online, that was it. What did it feel like going to that festival and not being on the main stage with Slayer or not being with part of Misfits? Like going and being on the smaller little tent and no expectations. People were coming in like, it's Biffy Clyro, it's Slayer, I don't know what to expect. That must
Yeah.
have been like a return to your early days, and it must have felt so nostalgic of like, yeah, let's win this crowd over.
Well, that's that's number one when you go on stage. Let's win them over. Let's blow away every band that was before us and that's after us. You know, at least that's my mindset. Um, it doesn't, for me personally, I feel it doesn't matter where I play. I don't care where I play. I'll play the small stage, big stage, small club. Doesn't matter to me as long as I'm playing. That's where the excitement is. I think it's more fun and more exciting to play in front of a small crowd than it is for a bigger one, because you see the expressions on their face, you know, you see their excitement, you know, you see also the changes, the shifts in the music and how that affects the human mind. You know, if we go into this, we break it down in some kind of halftime beat, whatever, you see the people getting into it. When you go into some kind of thrash beat, you know, you see it right there. You're not relying on this circle pit, you know, you actually see the look on their face. So
It's so
for
much
me,
more intimate, isn't it? Because there's not such a
it,
barrier. You know, the main stage is, you don't realize until you stand on it and look out. The divide between the crowd and the band is so, it's ginormous. But then you go into these little tents and it's like Simon can literally touch the person on the front row
yeah,
by just extending his
yeah,
arm. And I love that intimacy. I love the feeling of it just being too hot and just being like, the energy feels
yeah,
like
yeah.
on another level to anything else.
I agree. I agree. We played Brooklyn, New York recently, and it was a small club. It
I saw
was
the video footage. It was tiny.
holy shit. And but it was so much fun. I mean, I couldn't breathe in. You know, I was like, I don't like fans on stage. Not fans as in, you know, people, but as a
Yeah.
wind. I don't like fans. I don't like it. It doesn't feel good on my body when I play. I rather perspire, you know, sweat and just get into the moment. But that night, I went into this double bass section in one of the songs, and you know, it's a lengthy piece. By the time I finished that, I was like, there is no oxygen in the air. I couldn't take a breath. It was just nothing. And so I looked over to my drum tech, who wasn't behind me because the club was so small. He was in the crowd, you know, watching me. I said, I need a fan. You got to get me a fan, man, because it was so hot. But shows like that, I think, really, I think those kinds of performances show the level of musicianship, passion, and love for music, because I believe a lot of musicians would go up on a stage like that and make all kinds of demands. And, you know, it's like, and we didn't care. We just went up there and we thrashed like it was like we used to do, you know, when we were kids. So
It's the
it's
first
never
thing.
going to change.
Yeah, it's the first thing I knew when I saw your band play for the first time. There's no egos, even though there's bands there and members of bands that have headlined Download Festival, played all across the world, played with Guns N' Roses and Metallica and all these incredible experiences. You're also a band that just want to go and perform and have fun and enjoy it. And there's not many musicians in that band history and statuses that would let their egos go and just be like, yeah, let's go and play a small tent in front of 200 people.
Yeah. Well, that's, there's another artist. There's very, very a massive bass player named Steve Harris that goes out with British Lion and will play small club and will demand that there isn't a barrier between the band and the fans. And I heard that and I was blown away. It's like, yeah, there you go. There's the passionate one in the band. There's the guy that gets it. And, and that's commendable. I love that in musicians that aren't, pretentious or, think they're better than everyone else and can't play a small venue or a little pub. We've toyed around with the idea. There's I think it's called the Golden Lion in Todmorden, where we stayed, one of the very first times, the very first time that we got together, we said, hey, we should have our first show in this tiny pub. I said, let's do it. Come on, man. And we were this close. We even looked at the stage and, we saw the PA, which wasn't much, and but it didn't work out. It didn't work out.
Terrify
but,
all the
maybe,
locals.
Who knows, one day. And then, sometimes we're out and about on a day off and we're like, hey, I wonder if there's like some kind of jazz club that has some kind of, it's, like free, anybody could come up. And,
like an open mic night.
Open mic night.
Yeah.
And we do a little surprise, like we don't say anything to anybody. We just go up there and just do our thing, So we're always on the hunt for a place like that.
Well, that's it now. Now, when you're playing the UK in a couple of weeks, I'll be looking at every jazz club nearby Birmingham and Manchester and be like, I wonder if they're here.
Yeah, only if we have a day off and it really works out, but that
Amazing.
would be fun. I would love to do that.
And your solo album, Rights of Percussion, your debut solo album, and what made at this point of your career think, do you know what? Let's strip it back to just me.
Time. 2020 opened up, and 2021, I was living inside my studio, and I wasn't just, noodling with instruments and stuff like that. I was learning new software, new recording techniques. I had all my drums at home with me. They weren't in storage or a particular band's storage unit. Everything was at home. All my percussion, all my bells and whistles, everything. And, that allowed me to, that period allowed me to be creative and do what I've always wanted to do, which was create just a drum album with only consisting. I feel drums are a very musical instrument, even though they don't have, keys, notes or strings or anything like that. I tune my drums to certain pitches, and so inspired by one song by John Bonham that they put Zeppelin on their last album, Coda. They put a song in called Bonzo's Montreux, and that song was just drums. And then not only that song, but also the artist Tito Puente, who on an album that Patton introduced me to back in 91, 92 called Top Percussion. And because I had mentioned to him that I wanted to create a drum record based only on Bonzo's Montreux. And then when he introduced me to Tito Puente's Top Percussion album, that solidified my my goal to create something like this. But it took long because there was a lot going on, that inhibited that process. So now, fast forward to 2020 with time and being in the right place mentally, um, and having my drums with me, that allowed me to, create this body of work. And Patton's been always behind me. Dave, where's that drum album? Where's that drum album, man? You know,
It's
and when I
finally
presented,
here, Patton. Here you
it's
go.
like, here, man. I sent him the file, and immediately it was like, oh, there it is, and got me in communication with everybody in his record company, and hopefully I could put out another one in who knows, a couple years.
It's so exciting. Do you feel like there's much left to achieve? You've done so much in your career now. You've done everything and anything. I was wondering if you still had the passion and time to continue your art, because in 2015 you had your art book out. And I wondered if you had a follow up in mind, or if there was going to be the right time in your career, because we're not going to have another pandemic, I don't think. I don't think we'll have another
No.
time where everyone gets 2 years off.
Yeah.
But would there be a follow up book, do you think? Do you think there's still time to show the world more of your artwork?
Um, I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at one of the right now. Um, I think, that was more of a photographic approach to art.
Yeah.
Um, but with brushes and paint, that could be a possibility, but I think my passion will continue and remain to be music.
Yeah.
I don't see it going in that direction. Maybe, but I mean, there has to be something, a turn of events that will, um, you know, I wouldn't be able to play drums anymore. Then maybe I would, go into that. But right now I
That's
want
never going to
to.
happen anytime soon, is it?
Yeah,
No.
exactly. So you're not getting any art,
I think
So
from talking to you now, I think that we've got a second solo album not too far away. I think there must be ideas being penned. I know already from speaking to Simon that Empire State Bastard want a second album out, hopefully within the next 12 months. You're
Yeah,
not you're
well,
not you're not going to have much time off.
no, I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen. Um, you know, you never know, but like I said, when it comes to actual art pieces, I don't think I'm going to be dabbling in that.
No.
Music is for me is on the forefront, performing live, and utilizing these limbs for as long as they're capable. And the other night I saw Mick Jagger and on stage, and I was like, wow, that is so inspiring. I want to be 81. I want to be 85. I want to be 90 and still play. So
But here's the secret, Dave. He is a robot. He is a robot.
he is a robot.
81-year-old robot. How can anyone perform for nearly 2.5 hours on set, playing all these songs, dancing at 81?
Wow. Wow.
That's the headline from this podcast. Dave Lombardo is human. Mick Jagger is robot.
Is robot. But yeah, it's he's I've always loved the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was really, really, I mean, I don't think I was in school yet. I have a really good memory, which isn't always good. And I remember my brother having a Rolling Stones Flowers album, where their heads were on these little flowers on the cover. And I remember listening to those songs, and I really enjoyed their music. In a way, I'm going to get hated for this. I enjoyed Rolling Stones more than the Beatles.
There's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that.
And then later, in my career, like I think Slayer had put out, what was it? Seasons in the Abyss. One of the headlines, or talking points, or something that the publicist put out, or maybe a journalist, said that Metallica were the Beatles of heavy metal and Slayer were the Rolling Stones of heavy metal. And when I heard that, I was like, yeah,
The best
So
compliment.
yeah, it was for me, it was. And so, you know, it's just great. It's just great. I love it all.
My final question for you today, and I've asked this to every guest, it doesn't matter if it's been Anthony Hopkins or Mads Mikkelsen or even Simon Neil, everyone that comes on gets the final question, which is, as this interview's all wrapped up and ready for the world to listen to, I've edited it all, I've mixed it all down. The final piece of music is chosen on the spot by the guest that's on the podcast. So today it's your choice. It can
Oh
be
man.
any song by any band or any piece of music or any music score, but a piece of music or a song that stands above the rest that came to your heart when I asked the question. And I know this is not easy. There must be 10,000 songs in your head right now trying to whittle it down to one.
Wow.
Simon almost picked the Beach Boys and then went with Casey Musgraves, which was a surprise to me. But it was all about the melody and an acoustic Nashville singer, and he wanted the beautiful chorus and stuff. And that didn't surprise me, actually, when he said his reason. But I was wondering today what your choice would be. I'm a git, aren't
We got 9 minutes.
I?
Oh my God. Really? You're going to do this to me?
I am, and you're not allowed to email me or message me tonight and pretend that we did it on the episode. This is being recorded. It's going onto YouTube, so it really is a case of a little countdown. Any song by anyone. What's the one that came to your heart and your head and your soul when I asked the question? Something must have entered before anything else.
The quirky side of Lombardo picked Carl Stalling, composer for cartoons. But then this other side of me picked Bonzo's Montreux, since we were just talking about it.
Yes.
So, one side was like, oh, let's really throw the listeners for a loop and throw in something by Carl Stalling. But then another side of me was like, no, how about Bonzo's Montreux? So why don't we go ahead and go with Bonzo's Montreux?
I had Silverchair on only last week, and they also absolutely love Led Zeppelin. And both of them were like, we want a Led Zeppelin track, but it's down to 5. And in the end, they let me choose one of the songs from the 5 because they couldn't get it down to just one.
Wow. Well, I was always a big Zeppelin fan. And I think not just a Zeppelin fan, I was in love with the Power Trio.
Yeah.
Which for me, my brother turned me on when I was really young to Cream. Wheels of Fire, which was a live album, and he always used to play Toad, which was the drum solo song that Ginger Baker would just start going off for like 15 minutes. And so trios, Jack Bruce, Eric Clapton, Ginger Baker, Mitch Mitchell, oh my God, I can't remember his bass player, and Jimi Hendrix, and then John Paul Jones, Jimmy Page, John Bonham, Mike Vennart, Naomi McLeod, and myself. There are these
Nice.
musical trios. I really love that. The whole metal, 2 guitar player, thing is cool too, but it's a different animal. When a guitar player goes into a lead, there's no rhythm guitar to help him. You got to rely on that rhythm section, and there's a lot of magic when that trio is in motion, and playing on stage, and I love that. So, anyways, I don't know why I got into that.
It's beautiful to hear, and I really truly mean this. Thank you so much for your time and coming on the podcast. It really has been a dream come true. I'm so excited for the UK tour. I've already spoke to Simon. I'll be coming to the Birmingham show. I'll come and say hello, buy you a drink,
Please.
and it looks hopefully like Simon's doing me a tattoo, which I'm going to get to celebrate on my arm for episode 300 of the podcast, because he's covered and knows his tattoos work. So
Yeah.
I will come and say hello beforehand.
Yeah, it's funny joke. He's on stage, right? Not a joke. Funny story. He's on stage, and we were playing that small club at St. Vitus. And his back he's obviously facing the crowd, and he's on his keyboard. So I get a side view and a back view. And I'm watching it. I'm like, oh, I never seen that tattoo before. What does that mean? Oh, look at that one. Oh, that's pretty good. I can get that. So I'm like checking out his tattoos while I'm playing on stage. It's funny.
It's incredible. I can't wait. I'll be an honor to meet you. I'll come and say hello. And the shows are going to be really excited, but it really truly means a lot for you to give me your time. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Well, you're welcome. And thank you. And looking forward to these shows as well. I can't wait.
So there it is. There's my interview with me and the absolute legend, Dave Lombardo. Saying it out loud doesn't feel real, but you have just heard the interview. It did happen. It's no make-believe or dream. That really is something that happened on Mark and Me. And I'm so lucky and I'm so grateful. So thank you, Dave, for coming on the show and being an absolute legend and dream guest that I've wanted for so long. If you're listening to this interview right now and you still haven't checked out the band Empire State Bastard, please go and check them out. They have their debut album out now, but not only that, if you're in the UK, as you're listening to this, they're just about to embark on some UK dates, and they're phenomenal live. I was lucky enough to see them at Download, 2000 Trees, and most recently at Arctangent, and I'll be going to the Birmingham show, as you heard, and I can't wait. They're absolutely phenomenal and just a group of geniuses, and it's so good to see them live. Honestly, it will put them on another level to the record. Also, if you're new to Mark and Me and you've only just jumped on board because of this interview, there's over 300 episodes sitting there for you to dive right into, and there's something for everyone. Writers, directors, producers, film stars, honestly, you name it, there's someone on there, I believe, for everyone. And also, if you've enjoyed today's episode, you can also watch it. I've launched a YouTube channel now, so you can go and watch these videos. And so many people have been saying to me for so long, please film them, please get them up there. And the response has been amazing. Simply just jump onto YouTube and search Mark and Me podcast, and you can see interviews on there from so many different people. And honestly, just give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button, and I'll keep those videos coming for you guys at home. Also, I do have a Patreon account. I can't keep this podcast going each and every month without the support on there. It costs as little as £1 a month, and in return you get stickers, a prize pack, each and every month competitions, you get exclusive episodes called The Lost Tapes, and so much more. And all the money that goes into that via Patreon goes right back into the podcast and allows me to go out there and record more interviews for you guys at home. It really is about getting you guys at home as much material as I can. I'll be back in only a few days' time with another brand new episode, and it's a huge one. But just before I go, let's give a quick shout out to Richer Sounds and Folio Society, the sponsors of Mark and Me. Without those guys, I couldn't do this each and every week. And if you're in the market for some new books or a TV or a home cinema surround system, go on their websites and check them out. All that's left to do now is to say to you guys one more time, go and listen to Empire State Bastard. Look after yourself. Take care, and I'll speak to you all very soon.